They said David Okafor never walked. He floated. Everywhere he went in Abuja, people stepped aside for him the way you step aside for a convoy. His sneakers were always new, his phone was always the latest, and his car, his precious white Benz, announced him long before he spoke. To strangers, David was the boy living the kind of life most 19-year-olds could only dream of. To Abuja influencers, he was money boy. To girls, he was the catch of the year. And to himself, he was untouchable. Until one night when everything he ever knew crashed in a single phone call. But that part of the story will come later. Before David Okafor became the boy who lost everything, he was the boy who thought nothing could ever be taken from him. He grew up in a mansion in Maitama, where the walls were taller than the trees outside. His father, Chief Uchenna Okafor, owned half the construction contracts in Abuja. People said the man could build a road to heaven if you paid him enough. David never questioned where the money came from or how hard the journey had been. He only saw the finished product, the mansions, the cars, the foreign trips, the respect. His father earned it. He enjoyed it. School was never David's problem. His father had put him in a private university in Abuja, the kind where the school fees alone could feed a whole village. But David didn't care much about lectures. He cared about lifestyle. He cared about who was wearing what, who was trending, who had more money to blow on Friday nights at Woo's 2. People used to say, David is a good boy, but money has spoiled him. They were right. Even his girlfriend, Zara, pretty, sharp-tongued and obsessed with Instagram, once told him, Babe, you don't live in Nigeria. You live in your own world. David only laughed. My world sweet pass, he replied. His world was sweet indeed. Too sweet, almost unreal. And maybe that was why reality chose to hit him the way it did. Hard, fast, and without mercy. But that morning, when everything was still normal, David woke up in his large bedroom with sunlight streaming through the curtains. His phone buzzed non-stop on the table. Messages, birthday invites, people begging him to come for a party, people asking him for giveaways, Zara sending voice notes, complaining that he didn't call her back. Everything felt the same. Downstairs, breakfast was already set, thanks to the house staff. Good morning, sir. The maid greeted. David nodded, barely awake. He sat, grabbed bacon, fried egg, and a cup of tea. Life was good. The house was quiet, too quiet. His father usually sat at the dining table every morning, watching news or answering heavy business calls. But today, his chair was empty. Where's Dad? David asked the maid. In his study, sir. David shrugged. Maybe he had an early meeting. After breakfast, he took his car keys and headed out. He had plans. He always had plans. Woo's 2, clothes shopping, later hang out with friends at a rooftop lounge. Nothing unusual. But something unusual was waiting. Because while David was thinking about enjoyment, a storm was already forming quietly around his life. A storm with no warnings. A storm that would sweep everything away. Later that afternoon, while David was at a sneaker store in Jabi Lake Mall, laughing loudly with friends, his phone began to ring. His father. He almost ignored it, but something in him said, "Pick up." "Hello, Dad," he said casually. There was silence, heavy, cold, wrong. Then a voice that didn't sound like Chief Okafor said, "Is this David? Are you Chief Uchenna's son?" David froze. "Yes, what's happening? Where is my father?" The voice exhaled slowly. I'm sorry. Your father just collapsed at the Federal Secretariat. They're rushing him to the hospital now." The sneaker store disappeared. The noise faded. His heart slammed into his chest. What do you mean collapsed? My father doesn't collapse. He's fine. He was fine this morning. Please come quickly. The call ended. David stood there shaking, his friends staring in confusion. Guy, what didn't happen? I have to go, David whispered. He ran out of the store, dropped the shopping bag, forgot his wallet, forgot his pride. His father had collapsed. Number, not his father, not the man who controlled Abuja. It couldn't be real. He sped out of the mall, heart pounding, breath shaking, as if the world was already cracking beneath his feet. And by the time he reached the hospital, everything had changed. David almost crashed twice on the way to the hospital. He didn't feel the steering wheel. He didn't hear the horns. He didn't care that the traffic light was red. He only kept repeating one thing in his mind. My dad cannot die. My dad cannot die. My dad cannot die. The hospital gates finally came into view. He parked badly, half on the curb, half in the driveway, and ran inside like a madman. Emergency? He shouted at the receptionist. Chief Okafor, where is he? The woman pointed down the hallway. Ward B, second door. But David was already running. He pushed open the door and stopped. There were doctors. There were nurses. There were machines beeping. And there was his father lying on the bed. Still, too still. Chief Uchenna Okafor had always been a strong man. Even at 62, he walked with the confidence of a lion. His presence could fill a room. His voice could silence arguments. But the man on that bed, he looked smaller, weaker, fading. Daddy! David rushed to him. A doctor stepped forward. Please, calm down. What happened? David shouted. He was fine this morning. He was fine. One of the nurses lowered her eyes. The doctor sighed. It was a heart attack, a severe one. No, David whispered. No. My father doesn't get heart attacks. He's healthy. He jogs. He eats well. The doctor touched his shoulder gently. Your father's condition has been worsening for months. He didn't tell you? David shook his head slowly. He never said anything. Of course he didn't. Chief Okafor wasn't the type who liked looking weak. David moved closer to the bed and grabbed his father's cold hand. Daddy, please wake up. Please. The room felt like a boiling pressure cooker. Every second stretched like rope pulling tighter around his chest. Suddenly, the machines beeped louder. The doctor rushed forward. Nurses moved quickly. His pulse is dropping. Check the vitals. Push adrenaline. David stepped back, terrified, trembling uncontrollably. Daddy, he shouted. Please don't leave me. Daddy. Then the long, single beep filled the room, the sound that ends every argument, every promise, every plan. The doctor pressed 2 fingers on Chief Okafor's neck. No movement. He tried chest compressions. Again. Please, David whispered. Please. But after a final attempt, the doctor lowered his hands. Time froze. I'm sorry, the doctor said softly. He's gone. David felt the world tilt. His knees gave out. He fell to the floor, clutching his chest as if his head was tearing open. A nurse tried to help him up. He pushed her away. Don't touch me! Don't touch me! He screamed. His world, his father, his security, everything gone in one afternoon. People walking past peeked into the room, whispering, "That's the son. Very sad. God will console them." David didn't hear them. He didn't hear anything. Inside him, a slow burning wildfire began. Panic, confusion, denial, pain, everything twisting together until he couldn't breathe. He sat on the cold floor for almost an hour, staring at nothing. Eventually, a doctor approached him quietly. "We need you to call your family." Family. That word suddenly felt hollow. David forced himself to stand. His hands were shaking so badly, he dropped his phone twice before dialing. The first person he called was his uncle, his father's younger brother, Uncle Felix. "Hello?" Felix's voice was calm, too calm. David's voice cracked. "Uncle, Daddy is... He couldn't say it. The words refused to leave his mouth. Felix paused. "Is he gone?" David sobbed. "Yes." A long silence. Then Felix sighed. "All right, I'll inform the others. Stay at the hospital." He didn't even say sorry. He didn't even ask if David was alone. He simply ended the call. David wiped his face, swallowed the pain, and walked out of the ward. The house felt like a distant memory now. The money felt useless. His friends, the parties, the luxuries, nothing mattered. He was alone, completely alone. Hours later, his uncles and some relatives arrived at the hospital, faces stiff, expressions unreadable. David expected hugs, comfort, family. He received none. Uncle Felix shook his head slowly. "It's unfortunate, very unfortunate." Another uncle, Jude, simply said, "This is life." His Aunt Nena dabbed her eyes politely. "We have to be strong." They all acted like they had rehearsed it. Cold, organized, emotionless. David sat in a chair, numb, watching them. Then Uncle Jude said something that made David's stomach turn. "We need to move to the house immediately. We must secure the documents before the press hears anything." David blinked. Documents? Press? Business? His father's body was still warm. "What about Daddy?" David asked quietly. "Aren't we supposed to?" "He's gone," Jude said plainly. "Life must continue." David's eyes widened. He stood up slowly. "You people didn't even hug me. Didn't even ask how I'm coping." Felix cut him off. "This is not about emotions, David. There is work to do." David stared at all of them. It hit him like a slap. These people didn't come for him. They came for the empire, for the money, for the contracts, for everything his father built. And that was the moment David's heart began to break in a new way. Not from losing his father, but from realizing how quickly humans shift when money enters the room. When they left the hospital to secure the house, David stayed behind. He stood outside the building, staring at the Abuja skyline, glowing in the evening light. For the first time in his life, the city didn't look beautiful. It looked cruel, cold, and suddenly, a thought whispered in his mind. Maybe the storm has only just started. David finally left the hospital long after sunset. He drove slowly, not because of traffic, but because every movement felt heavy, like he was dragging a mountain behind him. His father's perfume still lingered faintly in the car, and for a moment he considered rolling down the window just to breathe something else, anything else, but he couldn't bring himself to erase the last trace of him. When he reached the family mansion in Maitama, the gate was already open, too open. He frowned. Usually, the security man opened the gate slowly, with procedure, with respect. Today, it gaped wide like a mouth waiting to swallow him. He stepped out of the car. Inside the compound, his uncles were already gathered. Felix, Jude, and 2 others from the extended family. They were moving around briskly with briefcases, papers, phones pressed to their ears. Nobody was crying. Nobody was sitting quietly in mourning. It looked like a board meeting, not a grieving home. David walked toward them, exhausted and confused. "Why is everyone acting like this?" he asked, his voice low but sharp. "My father just died. Can't we mourn first?" Jude gave him a dismissive look. "Mourning won't bring him back. We have responsibilities." "Responsibilities?" David repeated. My dad hasn't even been taken to the mortuary for preparation. And you're talking responsibilities? Felix sighed impatiently, as if David were a stubborn child. Listen, he said, stepping closer, lowering his voice in the tone adults use on confused teenagers. Your father's empire is huge, too huge. If we don't organize things immediately, it will collapse before morning. Let it collapse for one night, David snapped. He deserves that much. But the uncles were not listening. They never listened. Inside the house, David expected to see the maids grieving, maybe some distant relatives crying softly. Instead, he found accountants, lawyers, and even two of his father's business partners already seated at the dining table with laptops open. It made him sick. A lawyer in glasses approached him gently. David, please, we need you to sign some preliminary documents. No, he said, not today. The lawyer hesitated. Your uncles insisted. My father isn't even cold, David said quietly. And you want signatures? The lawyer swallowed and stepped back. David walked upstairs, ignoring the whispers behind him. He opened the door to his father's study, still smelling of paper, cologne, and old wood. His father's reading glasses were still on the table. His pen was exactly where he left it. The silence in that room was different. It wasn't empty. It was full of memories, full of a presence that had disappeared too fast. David sat in the chair behind the desk and buried his face in his hands. He had never felt so alone. His father had been strict, very strict, sometimes too strict, but he had always been there, always protecting, always guiding, always making sure David had more than he needed. Now he was gone, and the people who should feel the loss with him didn't. After a long moment, David wiped his face, stood up, and went back downstairs. He needed space, air, anything. He walked outside to the front steps and sat down. The night breeze brushed gently across his face, and for a moment he imagined his father's voice. David, don't be careless. Don't trust too easily. He didn't understand the words then. Now, they felt like warnings from a man who saw the future coming. The front gate clicked again. This time, another group of relatives entered. Cousins, aunties, people who barely visited when Chief Okafor was alive. They didn't come with condolences. They came with entitlement. One of the older aunties spotted David and hurried to him. Hey David, Andu O. Sorry my son, she said, hugging him lightly. He nodded silently. Then, as if it was natural, she asked, Your father's will, where is it kept? He stared at her. She blinked. What? She asked innocently. You shouldn't wait too long. People can manipulate things if documents are not secured quickly. Documents, money, property, contracts. That was all anyone cared about. Not his father. Not him. Not the pain. David stood up abruptly and walked away from them. He didn't know where he was going. He just couldn't stay there. Outside the main compound gate, he leaned against the wall, breathing deeply. A voice spoke from behind. You look like someone who wants to run away. He turned. It was the chief security guard, Musa, the man who had served his father for almost 15 years. David managed a small smile. Maybe I do? Musa stepped closer. Your father was a great man. Hard man, yes, but good man. I am sorry for your loss. Those words meant more to David than all the useless condolences inside. Thank you, he whispered. Musa hesitated, then said quietly, You need to be careful. Your uncles, they are moving fast, very fast. I don't like what I am seeing. David frowned. What do you mean? Musa looked around, lowered his voice. They came here before you. They collected keys to offices, safes, everything. They told the staff not to inform you David's blood ran cold. What? Musa nodded. They went into your father's private office too. They didn't let anyone follow. David's heart pounded. Private office? The one his father kept locked? The one even he wasn't allowed to enter? What were they doing inside? David asked. I don't know, sir. But they took files, many files. David stared at the mansion. Something felt wrong, very wrong. The way they rushed, the lack of mourning, the sudden interest in documents, the secretive meetings. Pieces of a dark puzzle began to form. What are they planning? David whispered. Musa looked him straight in the eyes. I don't know, sir. But whatever it is, you must be ready. David took a deep breath, feeling the weight of a storm he wasn't prepared for. He thought losing his father was the hardest thing he would ever face. But he was wrong. The real battle was just beginning, and the people he had to fight were sitting inside his own house. The next morning, Abuja woke to its usual chaos. Sirens in the distance, engines humming, hawkers shouting, pure water, gala, along the sidewalks. But inside the Okafor mansion, everything felt strangely cold. David barely slept. He tossed on his bed, replaying Musa's words over and over. They collected the keys. They went into the private office. They took files. By sunrise, he had made up his mind. He wasn't going to sit quietly while his uncles tore apart everything Chief Okafor built. He would find out exactly what they were doing and why. He showered quickly, dressed, and stepped outside. The compound felt different. Half the staff were gone. The drivers didn't come out to greet him. The housekeepers avoided eye contact, whispering among themselves. The silence was warning him. After breakfast, if you could call 2 spoonfuls of cereal breakfast, he walked straight to his father's private office. But when he reached the door, something was wrong, very wrong. The heavy metal lock had been replaced. A new padlock, a new chain, new security. David stared at it, disbelief tightening his chest. His father's office had never been tampered with. Even he, the only child, didn't have access without permission. It held sensitive documents, contracts, records, deals, things the public didn't know his father was involved in. Why would the uncles change the lock? And without telling him, as he stood there confused, a voice echoed behind him. You shouldn't be here, Uncle Felix said, adjusting his cufflinks as he approached. David turned slowly. This is my father's office. Felix smiled without warmth. Was your father's office? David's jaw tightened. What does that mean? It means, Felix said, stepping closer. Things are changing. Your father's business structure must be reorganized. Assets must be audited. Documents secured. Everything must be under proper supervision. Whose supervision? David asked. Felix's lips curved. Ours, of course. Why not mine? David asked. Felix laughed. Actually laughed. You? He said. David, my boy, you're not ready. You have no experience. You've been partying all your life. You don't know what the business requires. David felt heat in his chest. My father was going to train me. He said I'd take over. Yes, Felix said. Someday. But he didn't groom you in time. And business doesn't stop because your father died. David stepped closer. Open the office. Felix's expression hardened instantly. No. Why? David demanded. Felix leaned in, eyes sharp. Because you're not the heir to the business. David froze. What? What are you talking about? Felix crossed his arms. Did you ever see your father's will? No. He said it would be read when the time comes. Well, Felix said, the time came. last night. And unfortunately for you, the company was not left in your name." David's stomach clenched. "You're lying." "I'm not." Felix reached into his suit and pulled out a folded paper. "Your father signed a new will 2 months ago. He left everything, business holdings, properties, investments, under the trusteeship of the family board, meaning us." "That can't be true," David whispered. "Why would he do that?" Felix held his gaze, cold, confident, deadly calm. "Because your father knew you weren't ready." David felt something crumble inside him. "Where is the will?" he said. "It's with the lawyer," Felix replied. "We'll have a formal reading in a few days. But I wanted you to know, Ellie, so you can adjust your expectations." "My expectations?" David said, voice shaking. "This is my father's legacy." Felix shrugged. "And we are protecting it." "Relax, David. You'll get something, a small allowance maybe. But the power, the ownership, that's not yours anymore." David stepped back, dizzy. His father would never do that to him. Never. "You're lying," he repeated, voice soft. Felix's expression finally shifted. A smirk, small and poisonous. "Believe what you want," he said, turning away. "But stay out of the office and stay out of business decisions. It's for your own good." He walked away, leaving David standing there with trembling hands. Something was terribly wrong, deeply wrong. Either Felix was lying or something darker had happened before Chief Okafor's death. A betrayal, a setup, a manipulation. The puzzle pieces were rearranging themselves in David's mind, forming a terrifying picture. He needed someone he could trust. He only knew one person, Musa. He found the head of security near the back of the compound, inspecting the CCTV box. When Musa saw him, he straightened and saluted lightly. "Sir, we need to talk," David said. Musa looked around carefully. "Let's go behind the generator house. They won't hear us there." Once they were hidden behind the tall industrial generator, David exhaled. "They changed the lock to my father's office," he said. "I know," Musa replied. "They did it last night after you slept." "Why would they do that? What are they hiding?" Musa hesitated. "Sir, I don't want to put my mouth where it doesn't belong, but your uncles, they came with some men I've never seen before. They were carrying boxes out of the office." "What kind of boxes?" David asked sharply. "Documents, hard drives, envelopes, things they were hiding from the staff." David's heart dropped. "What about the CCTV?" he asked. Musa lowered his eyes. They removed the footage. David closed his eyes, fighting the urge to scream. "What are they planning, Musa? What are they doing?" Musa shook his head. "I don't know everything, but I know men who behave like that. I've seen it. When someone dies and there's money involved, families change." David swallowed hard. "You think they want to take everything?" Musa looked at him. Then he looked away. That answer was enough. David paced, running his hand through his hair. "I need proof. Something I can use. Something they can't hide." Musa spoke slowly. "Your father, he always had copies. Backup copies, hidden somewhere else." David snapped his head up. "Where?" "I don't know," Musa said. "But he mentioned it once. He said, 'If anything happens to me, the truth is not in the mansion.' The truth is not in the mansion." David repeated the sentence quietly. Was it in the office? Another property? A safe deposit box? A trusted employee? He needed to think. But before he could piece it together, someone shouted from the main building, "David, come here." It was Uncle Jude. David and Musa exchanged a glance. "Be careful," Musa whispered. David braced himself and walked back toward the house. Inside, the living room was crowded. relatives, lawyers, family board members, staff, everyone standing around like they were waiting for a verdict. Jude gestured for David to sit. "We have something to show you." The lawyer stepped forward, holding a tablet. He pressed play. A video began. It was Chief Okafor in his office, looking tired, looking older than David remembered. "David," his father said in the video, "if you're watching this, it means I'm gone." David's breath caught in his throat. The video continued. "I know this will hurt you, but as much as I love you, you are not ready to handle the empire. Not yet. There are enemies watching, people waiting to destroy everything I built." David's hands trembled. "I have trusted the family board to manage the business until you become mature enough to lead properly, learn, grow, and when the time is right, they will give you full control." The video ended. Silence. David stared at the blank screen, numb. Uncle Felix clapped his hands once. "You see? Your father said it himself." Jude nodded. "This is why we must take charge. It's his instructions." The room watched David closely, waiting for him to break, and he was breaking, but not in the way they expected, because something was wrong with the video, not the message, not the tone, not the timing. It was his father's eyes. Chief Okafor had a unique habit. Every time he spoke seriously, he looked away for a second, adjusting his cufflink or tapping the table. A subtle gesture, a habit David grew up seeing. But in the video, he didn't do it, not once. The gestures were stiff. His father seemed scripted, unnatural. It didn't feel real. Something was off, very off. But David kept his face still, expression unreadable. Felix put a hand on his shoulder. "Accept it, David. Your father didn't think you were ready." David swallowed and nodded slowly. "Okay," he said quietly, if that's what he wanted. The room relaxed. Everyone thought they had won, but inside David's mind, a fire had ignited. Something dark and cold was whispering to him. "This wasn't your father's message. They're hiding something, and you must find it before they destroy you." That night, when everyone else slept, David sat alone in his room with the lights off. He replayed the video in his mind. His father's eyes, his strange posture, the stiff movement. It was wrong, deeply wrong. He opened his laptop and searched. Deepfake video detection. He didn't know much about tech, but he knew fake when he saw it. If his uncles faked that message, if they forged a will, if they stole documents, they were capable of anything. David wasn't the spoiled, rich boy anymore. He was a man with nothing left to lose. And when a man loses everything, he becomes dangerous. The next morning arrived with a heaviness that sat in David's chest like a stone. Abuja's sunlight streamed through his curtains, but inside his heart, it felt like night. He sat on his bed, staring at the floor, replaying the supposed message from his father. Every second of that video whispered one truth. Something is wrong. His father never spoke like that. He never left decisions to others. He never sounded rehearsed. David clenched his jaw. His uncles thought he was weak, that he'd break quietly. They didn't know the fire burning through him. He stood, grabbed his phone, and dialed the only person he could still trust. "Musa, I need to see you." 10 minutes later, they were at the back gate, out of sight from the cameras the uncles had installed around the compound. "You watched the video," Musa said quietly. David nodded. "And?" Musa asked. "It's fake," David whispered. "Not the man, but the message. Something is wrong with that recording." Musa didn't look surprised. "I thought so too," he said. "Your father didn't record anything in his last week. I was with him most of the time, He was sick, sir. Very sick. He could barely stand. There's no way he gave that clean message. David swallowed. Do you think they forced him? Musa breathed slowly. I don't know. But I know your father wouldn't cut you out willingly. That hurt more than anything else. David nodded. I need to find proof. They can't erase everything. Musa looked around. There is one person who might know something. Mr. Clement, your father's personal lawyer. Not the family lawyer. The private one. David blinked. My father had a second lawyer. Everyone powerful has one, Musa replied. Someone the family doesn't know. Someone trusted. Where is he? David asked. His office is in Maitama. I can take you. David exhaled. Finally, a lead. Let's go. Before they noticed, David slipped out of the mansion through the back, wearing a hoodie and cap. Musa drove an old dusty sedan instead of the usual luxury jeeps. No one would suspect a thing. The Abuja streets passed in a blur. David stared out the window, replaying a memory. His father sitting beside him in the study, saying, David, true power is not loud. True power doesn't announce itself. It waits. Quietly, his father had been preparing him, not for comfort, but for war. They reached Maitama. Musa parked. Inside a small office building, they found Clement, an older man with silver hair, glasses, and a calm expression. When he saw David, he froze. My God, David, I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Why? David asked. Clement locked the door, checking the windows like he already knew danger was around them. Because your father's will was changed illegally. David's breath stopped. What? Clement motioned for them to sit. 2 months ago, your father called me. He told me he feared he was being watched, manipulated. He asked me to draft a new will, but he never signed it. He said he wanted to speak to you first. David blinked rapidly. So he never approved any changes? Clement shook his head firmly. Absolutely not. The last legal will listed you as the sole heir to the business and primary properties. The family board had power only to advise, not control. David felt his blood run hot. So the new will? Forged, Clement said. Either forced or fabricated. And the video? Manipulated or rehearsed. Your father would never cut you out. Never. David's hands trembled. He almost couldn't breathe. His father trusted him. His father believed in him. His father was on his side. But his uncles? They stole everything. They want the company, David whispered. Clement nodded slowly. And they'll destroy you to get it. David sank into the chair, head spinning. Is there any proof? He asked. Anything I can use? Clement stood and opened a cabinet. He handed David a sealed envelope. Your father gave me this, his personal notes, passwords, and instructions. He told me to give it to you, only if something suspicious happened after his death. David stared at the envelope, speechless. His father prepared for this. He expected betrayal. He expected danger. He expected the worst. He trusted David to finish what he started. Take it, Clement urged, but be careful. If your uncles find out you have this, they will come for you. David clenched the envelope. I'm not afraid anymore. Musa touched his shoulder gently. You must be smart, sir. This thing pass fear. Clement nodded. Read the documents. There are names, accounts, recordings. Enough to destroy anyone who betrayed your father. David's pulse quickened. Recordings? He needed privacy, somewhere safe to open the envelope. Not the mansion, not anywhere near his uncles. We have to leave, he said. Now, when they got back to the mansion, something felt wrong immediately. The gate was wide open. The guards were missing. The pavilion lights were off. Musa slowed the car. "Sir, something is not right." As they approached the entrance, David noticed broken glass on the floor and voices inside, many voices. "Oh no," Musa whispered. They pushed open the door. The living room was chaos, furniture overturned, drawers emptied, documents scattered. David's heart dropped. Someone had searched the house. For what? Before he could move, Uncle Felix walked out of his father's study with two men in dark suits behind him. He saw David and smiled like a man who had caught a thief. "You went out today," Felix said, without informing the family. David kept calm. "I'm not a prisoner." Felix raised a brow. "Aren't you?" David clenched his fists. "Why is the house upside down?" "Security check," Felix said casually. "We're making sure important documents are safe." "Safe from what?" David asked. Felix's smile grew wider. "Safe from you." David's eyes darkened. They suspected. They knew he was looking for answers. "I don't have anything of yours," David said. "But you might have something of ours," Felix replied. "Something your father left behind." The envelope in David's pocket suddenly felt like fire. "We'll search your room," Felix said. "If you have nothing to hide, you won't mind." David's heart hammered violently. He needed to hide the envelope now. Musa sensed it instantly. He stepped forward, blocking the staircase. "Sir, with due respect," Musa said to Felix, "this is harassment." The boy just lost his father. "Move!" Felix snapped. Musa didn't. Felix signaled the two men behind him. "Remove him!" One of the men shoved Musa hard, sending him crashing into a table. David rushed forward, but the other man grabbed him by the arm. Felix approached him slowly, eyes cold. "You think you're smarter than us? That you can sneak around? That you can outplay people who built this family?" David stared him dead in the eyes. "I don't fear you." Felix's smile vanished. "Search him." David struggled, but they held him down, patting his pockets, checking his jacket. The envelope was still there. Seconds stretched into eternity. Their hands reached his back pocket, and Musa suddenly caused a distraction. He grabbed a chair and hurled it across the room, hitting one of the decorative vases, which shattered loudly. "Hey!" Musa shouted. "A snake!" "A big one." It ran under the sofa. Instant chaos erupted. Guards jumped back. The men holding David flinched. Even Felix stepped away, startled. Musa shouted again, pointing. "There! It's moving!" David understood instantly. The moment he was free, he bolted up the stairs, sprinting faster than he ever had in his life. Felix roared, "Get him!" David reached his room, slammed the door, locked it, and ran to the bathroom. He tore open the back of the sink cabinet and shoved the envelope deep into the plumbing cavity. No one would find it there. Not now, not ever. Footsteps thundered toward his door. "Open this door now!" Felix shouted. David exhaled and opened the door casually. "Never run from a snake," he said calmly. "It follows you." The men stormed inside, searching everywhere. Under the bed, inside drawers, behind curtains. Nothing. Felix stepped close, inches from David's face. "You're becoming a problem, boy." David smiled coldly. "And you're becoming predictable." Felix's jaw twitched. "This is not over," he said. "No," David replied softly. "It's just beginning." Felix stared at him for a long, tense second. Then he turned and left with the others. David shut the door. His heart raced. The envelope was safe, for now. But one thing was painfully clear. His uncles were willing to destroy him to steal his father's empire. And David, the once spoiled rich boy, the one they underestimated, had just shifted from prey to hunter. Night pressed down on Abuja like a heavy blanket, But David couldn't sleep. He lay on the thin mattress in the small apartment Musa had found, staring at the ceiling even though the bulb was off. His mind was loud, too loud. Every memory, every voice, every warning from the last weeks chased itself in circles inside him. He wasn't the same boy who once drove expensive cars to clubs. He wasn't the same son who trusted his uncles. And he wasn't the same heir people once envied. He was something else now. Someone forced into a new life he didn't ask for. The small apartment smelled of dust and old paint. Outside, a generator hummed somewhere. Occasionally, a car sped past on the main road. And yet, even in this rundown part of town, David felt safer than he ever did in the mansion. For the first time since his father's funeral, he wasn't being watched. Or so he hoped. By morning, he sat up slowly. His back ached from the thin mattress, but he didn't care. His focus was sharper than it had ever been. The envelope his father left him, still hidden inside his backpack, pulled at him like gravity. He finally reached for it. His hands were steady this time. The envelope wasn't thick, but when he opened it, it felt like opening a wound. Inside were a USB drive, a folded sheet of handwritten notes, and a list of dates and names scribbled in his father's handwriting. And beneath that, a short letter. David unfolded it slowly. If you're reading this, I am gone. Not by accident, he froze. His throat tightened painfully. He forced himself to keep reading, even though the words hurt more with every line. I feared this for months. There are people around me who want everything: power, control, money. They will not hesitate to destroy anyone who gets in their way, not even family. David, trust no one, not even those you grew up calling uncle. Protect yourself and protect the truth. David closed his eyes. He felt his chest tightening, like someone was squeezing his ribcage from inside. The reality was no longer a suspicion, no longer something Musa hinted at. His father knew. He knew he would be betrayed, and he still died. David. He opened his eyes. Musa was leaning against the wall, watching him. You all right? David nodded like someone lying to themselves. We need to see what's on that drive. Musa opened the old laptop and plugged the USB in. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the screen blinked. A folder appeared. David leaned in. The first file was a video. When he clicked it, his father appeared on screen, sitting in his office, the one David had visited 1,000 times growing up. But now his father looked tired, not with age, but with fear he was trying to hide. If anything happens to me, this is my testimony, his father said quietly. My brothers have betrayed me. David's breath caught. They have been moving funds behind my back, stealing, laundering, setting traps. I confronted them. They denied everything, but I have proof of every lie, and I know what they are capable of. The video ended there. David sat back, numb. He felt his heart beat in his throat, in his skull, everywhere at once. He finally whispered, "They killed him." Musa didn't answer. He didn't need to. David opened the next video, and the next document, the next recording. By the time he finished, the room felt colder, heavier. His uncles didn't just cheat the company. They orchestrated a takeover. They planned his father's downfall. They planned David's disappearance. Everything made sense now. The day at the cemetery, the men in the black SUV, the ransacked room, the silence. They were wiping every trace of the truth, and David was the final loose end. He stood slowly, pressing his palms against the table, breathing hard through his nose. "No more running," he said. His voice didn't shake. His hands didn't shake. Nothing shook. The fear had burned away, leaving something harder: resolve. Musa stepped beside him. "What are you going to do?" David stared at the window, where the morning light was beginning to bleed through the dusty curtains. "I'm going to finish what he started." He grabbed his jacket. "We're meeting someone today," he continued. "Someone who knows how my uncles operate. Someone who hates them enough to help." Musa frowned. "Who?" "Mr. Adewale." Musa blinked. "Your father's former partner? The one they forced out?" David nodded. "Yes, I'm done hiding. I'm done being afraid. If I'm going to take my life back, I'll need someone who understands the battlefield." They stepped out into the hallway, locking the apartment behind them. But this time, it felt different. For weeks, David had moved like a shadow. Today, he moved like a storm. He wasn't the rich boy who lost everything overnight anymore. He was the son of a man who saw betrayal coming and prepared a weapon powerful enough to destroy it. And now, that weapon had a name: David. He walked through the crowded street with his head high, the Abuja sun hitting his face. People brushed past him, vendors shouting, bikes honking, children running barefoot. None of them knew who he was. None of them knew the war he was stepping into. But David knew, and he wasn't stepping into it as a victim. He was stepping into it as someone who finally understood the truth. His life wasn't ruined. It was reborn. The meeting with Mr. Adewale did not happen in an office, a restaurant, or any place that suggested power. Instead, it happened behind a quiet mechanic workshop in Gwarimpa, a dusty, half-abandoned corner where no one paid attention to who entered or left. David and Musa arrived first. Musa kept glancing around, tense. David stayed still, hands in his pockets, watching mechanics hammer rusted bolts as if their noise could drown out the tension in the air. A black Prado pulled up minutes later. The door opened, and an older man stepped out, bald, tall, wearing a simple shirt and trousers. He didn't walk like someone defeated by life. He walked like someone waiting patiently for the world to catch up with the truth. "David," he said, voice calm, "you look like your father did when he realized who he was dealing with." David swallowed. "Sir, I didn't know who else to come to." "You came to the right place," Adewale said. "Your father trusted me even after they pushed me out. If he left you something, you must protect it." David nodded slowly. "I intend to." They moved behind the workshop, away from ears, away from eyes. David handed him the USB. Adewale opened the files, watched the videos, scanned the documents. His jaw clenched tighter with every page. Finally, he shut the laptop gently, as though it held a fragile truth. "They killed him," Adewale said quietly. They knew he would expose the fraud. They needed him gone. David felt the words hit him like a physical blow. He looked away, breathing hard through his teeth. Adewale placed a hand on his shoulder. "But listen to me. This is not a story of loss. It is a story of justice. You are not as powerless as they assume." David met his eyes. "What do I do?" Adewale smiled faintly, the smile of a man who'd waited years for this moment. "You fight back the way your father would, with truth." He outlined a plan, a bold one, a dangerous one, but a plan that could bring everything into the light. David listened. Every word felt like fuel. They would gather allies, leak documents, expose the illegal transfers, freeze access to stolen accounts, force an investigation so loud the uncles couldn't bury it. By the time they left the workshop, David felt something he hadn't felt in months: control. For days, Abuja buzzed quietly with movement. Documents moved through encrypted messages. Journalists were contacted discreetly. a retired EFCC officer agreed to assist. One by one, pieces of a powerful puzzle began to fall into place, and David moved among them like someone born for this. Then, on a warm Monday morning, the storm broke. News headlines burst across Nigeria. It spread like wildfire. Customers pulled their investments. Partners demanded answers. Government agencies swooped in. And David's uncles, the men who once stood over his father's grave pretending to mourn, were suddenly cornered like rats in daylight. That afternoon, David walked into the same boardroom where they once dismissed him. Now, every camera in the country was watching. The uncles sat stiff, sweating, whispering angrily among themselves. When David stepped in, they froze. He didn't shout. He didn't boast. He simply took the chair at the head of the table, his father's chair. A symbolic moment, a powerful moment. "This company belongs to the Nwosu legacy," David said steadily. "My father built it, and no matter how hard you tried, you could not destroy what he created." One uncle stood. "You think you can disgrace us?" David looked him straight in the eyes. "You disgraced yourselves." Security officers stepped forward. EFCC agents followed. His uncles were taken away one by one, shouting, denying, begging. David watched silently. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply breathed, deep, slow, free. When the room emptied, he sat alone for a long time. His father didn't get justice in life, but he got it through his son. By evening, Musa joined him. "It's over," he said softly. "No," David replied. "It's beginning." He wasn't talking about revenge anymore. He was talking about rebuilding. In the weeks that followed, David didn't take over the entire company. Instead, he allowed a new board to be elected, supervised investigations, and helped restructure departments. He refused to become the same kind of leader his uncles were. He wanted to honor his father, not imitate him. Adewale became his mentor. Musa became his closest ally. And slowly, the Nwosu name regained its dignity. But one person remained missing from this new chapter. A girl named Ifunanya, the only one who stood by him when he had nothing. One day, while the sun dipped over Abuja's skyline, David found himself walking down the road near the small food kiosk where she once worked. The same place she used to save him plates of jollof and soft plantain. The kiosk was still there. She wasn't. He turned to leave, then heard a quiet voice behind him. "David?" He turned sharply. She stood there holding a bag of groceries, confused at first, then smiling, softly, carefully, like someone afraid to hope too much. "I heard everything," she said. "The news, your name everywhere. I didn't know if you'd ever come back here." He stepped closer. "I should have come sooner," he said. "I owe you more than you know." She shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. I just wanted you to find your way." David breathed in slowly. "I did, but the way feels incomplete without you." She looked up at him, heart pounding, eyes shining with warmth he didn't deserve but needed. "Then maybe," she said softly, "your new beginning is just getting started." David smiled slightly, the first true smile in months, the kind that felt like sunrise. That night, as they walked down the quiet Abuja street side by side, David felt something settle deep inside him. Not wealth, not power, not victory, peace. He had lost everything. He had been betrayed. He had been broken. But from the ashes, he built a life on truth, courage, humility, and love. The rich boy who once had everything found something far greater, himself.